Okay. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. So this is one of those slides that you put together to convince funding agencies that you are everything, that you do everything, and that to the extent graphically possible, everything in the program is connected to everything else. But really what I want to focus on is that at its core, this group studies very special nanocrystalline assemblies and the experimental measurements that we do and the theory have really evolved around the fabrication of those systems. So I think our connection to LRSM may begin with Sherry Kagan, who was actually an undergraduate here at Penn and published a paper with Peter Davies at the time. So this is an example of the kind of system that we study. These are nanocrystalline superlattices. So what I want you to imagine is a regular atomic crystal, but instead of the atomic sites, you've actually got nanocrystals at each site. So this is it's a three-dimensional solid with they can have complex unit cells and long-range order on these length scales up to typically like 10 micrometers and sometimes quite a bit larger than that. There's quite a lot of flexibility in making these systems, and we have tremendous capability here on campus that Chris Murray is really the pioneer in developing these systems and has an incredible library of these materials. So as this new IRG moves forward, I think that we have a lot that we can learn from the intellectual legacy within the LRSM. As you've heard, people within the LRSM clarified the role of entropic depletion interactions in the self-assembly process for colloidal systems. And additional work looked at how to incorporate fuzzy surfaces and charges between the constituents in a beautiful and elegant analogy to foams and minimal surfaces. And many of these people are still here, and we can talk to them and try to understand how these systems form. In a former life, I was involved with the oxide IRG in the last cycle of the MERSET, and I was privileged to witness some really terrific work by Peter Davies and graduate student at the time, Beth White. These are nanocrystalline, these are superlattices forming in a very complex oxide system. What you have here is a compositional periodicity that's occurring with columnar regions penetrating into this image of one type of composition surrounded by an annulus of a different kind of composition. And the excitement here is the ability to introduce a very high density of interfaces in a system with potential for electronic and magnetic interactions between those. So I would say that the spirit of that prior work really is consistent with the kind of things that we're trying to do in our group. We look at assemblies of nanocrystals. In our case, there's really quite a diverse periodic table that we have to choose from, extending to this atomic analogy. The nanocrystals themselves can be lots of different sizes and shapes, many different functional properties. They can be metals, semiconductors, magnets, phosphors, and we're interested in exploring the types of collective behaviors that can emerge as we progress from small clusters to layered systems to fully three-dimensional systems. And it's important to note that within these systems, all matter is within just a few nanometers of an interface. Okay, so there's really potential for very interesting collective behaviors. The types of things that we look at are the emergence of electronic, magnetic, phononic, and plasmonic behaviors. And I certainly don't have time to tell you really much of the deep science about any one of these, so I'll just give you a snapshot of the types of things that we're interested in. I'll focus mostly on the multi-component nanocrystalline superlattices. Why do we call these interdimensional materials? This is something that Iwei brought up. Well, it's because you think about the individual elements. These are zero-dimensional, quantum-confined, typically, nanocrystalline systems connected by a higher dimensional network of interactions. They're available. You can tune the geometry of the unit cell and therefore that network with a wide variety of different structural motifs. It's worth mentioning, I won't really talk too much about this, but we are also working on ways to template nanocrystal assemblies and control dimeric type orientations. And we have special capabilities with Maria Derndic in this group to form nanogap electrodes and interrogate those systems electronically. One thing that's really striking about these systems, and this is a terrific advance that came in the last few years, the ability to form films that can be transferred to arbitrary substrates. These films are formed in a little tub at the interface between a solvent and liquid of something else. The nanocrystal solvent evaporates, the nanocrystal film is left on the surface, and you can lift it off onto a substrate. These are amazingly strong. This is a picture of a film on transmission electron microscope grid. And when this is done, a large number of these individual 5-micron windows are fully crystalline and totally intact. So this surprising mechanical strength is something that's interesting to look at, and we have a collaboration with IRG3 to explore that. So one of the topics I mentioned is that we're interested in plasmonically enhanced functionality within these systems. And so the idea here is that there are nanocrystalline systems that are nanophosphors. They can convert one frequency of light to another. For example, you can upconvert from the infrared into the visible. This is really quite striking when you see it in person. That you can downconvert from the UV into the visible. And this has obvious applications for light harvesting and photovoltaic systems for solar energy capture. But what you'd really like to be able to do is accentuate this process, enhance it in a way that has some clear design. One of the terrific things about these systems is they're structurally regular. You can have real quantitative models about interactions within these systems. And for example, Nader and Geda in our group models electromagnetic interactions. We're building plasmonic resonance cavities to surround nanophosphors in order to enhance light output through things like Purcell effect. One other thing that's quite interesting to look at in these systems, phononics. Because they're regular nanocrystalline assemblies, just the fact, really independent of what we choose for the nanocrystals, the fact that there is a density variation in the system that has this kind of periodicity, variation in the speed of sound, means that ubiquitously throughout these systems you're going to have interesting phononic structure. So we are interested in exploring the properties of that. I think this is a project that's really just beginning, but we can calculate terahertz energy scale gaps in these systems. And so we think that in the long run, beyond characterizing this, looking for phononic band gaps, et cetera, there could be applications to controlling transition rates in nanophosphors that are phonon-assisted, and also to changing the thermal conductivity for applications in thermal electrons. We are interested in magnetic nanocrystalline superlattices. This is maybe a somewhat more mature project because a lot of the systems that have evolved that we've studied in my lab have involved magnetic constituents. One of the ideas here is to use these systems to take magnets that have individually maybe not optimal properties, but the combination of the two achieves something that's never really seen in nature. And so an idea here is to combine hard and soft magnets, where the hard magnet carries a large coercive field, the soft magnet carries a large moment. You get a large energy density storage through that combination. We're also interested in looking at magnetoresistance that can come through these assemblies, where essentially every motion of a carrier or spin through this system, if you want to think about that, has to travel through a very high density of interfaces. So lastly, we're interested in electronic properties. This is interesting for some of the things I've talked about, the magnetic transport work, thermoelectrics, but also just for electronic devices in their own right. And there's really been terrific progress since we started on looking at ligand exchange. This is work by collaboration between the Murray and the Kagan groups in exchanging the conventional ligands that are used to solubilize nanocrystals with much shorter ligands that allow the nanocrystals to come in much more intimate contact. And this substitution has produced a band-like transport in the system. This is optical spectra showing a hybridization of the electronic levels. Another way that we can vary the electronic coupling is through using a high-pressure diamond Anvil cell, which we can use to bring these into more intimate contact, and it's something we're interested in combining with the ligand exchange mechanism. So we're looking to evolve the couplings through chemical design and also mechanical strength. Now, this is a short talk. I thought that it would be appropriate to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do on campus as well, just beyond the science, and think about how that connects to the history of the LRSM. So we're involved in a lot of things. A couple of things that I'll focus on. There's this new Center for Nanotechnology. It's the building, you can't possibly have missed it, being built right next door. And three of the members of this IRG have had principal roles in the design and guidance in the construction of this building. Chris Murray, Sherry Kagan, and myself. And I want to emphasize this is a highly collaborative space. This is one of the nano buildings where there is nobody on this campus who has assigned private lab space. Nobody stood up and said, I've got to have a lab in that building or else it's not going to be built. There's a clean room in this space. There are shared user facilities. There are some general purpose labs which have yet to be assigned. And I think that speaks well to the spirit of the LRSM. If I pulled this out of a second annual report for LRSM, so this is from 1962. And they're talking about the core values and the guiding principles of the LRSM. And number 3 on the list, assignment of space. We talk about bringing people into contact with each other so that they'll interact. It says we plan to pool such tools in a series of central facilities in the new building. This was an important idea back then. It's an idea that continues to guide us right now as we move forward with this new building. Another thing that I'll talk about, I am the director of something called the Property Measurement Facility. It's going to be moving into the new center. This is a system that has lots of capabilities. Many different measurements can be done. We've just added some liquefiers. There are lots of users, 10 PhD theses, where I would say the bulk of their property measurement data came out of that facility. And as proud as I am of this facility, I'm really humbled when I think about what was done in the past. So this is the legacy that we have to live up to. Back in 1968, this is again from a different annual report. Eli was working on establishing a new high-field magnet lab here, and it was really at its time, even on an absolute scale, quite a spectacle. And he was clever enough to have an advertisement for this system placed in Physics Today, something I would never be able to pull off. So with that, I'll just end my talk, and thank you for your time.